He looked me dead in the eyes, handed me an invitation to watch him propose to another woman. He said I had to be there. He said I owed him that much. And like a fool, I went. But what happened at that proposal? Nobody was ready for it, not even him. And if you've ever been made to feel invisible in your own relationship, stay with me. This story will shake something loose in you. Hit that subscribe button right now because we don't sugarcoat anything on this channel. Let's get into it. I want you to picture the most beautiful lie you've ever believed. Not the kind that comes with a sloppy excuse or a nervous eye, the kind that comes wrapped in consistency, in effort, in 5 full years of a man showing up just enough to keep you from asking the questions you should have been asking the whole time. That was my marriage. That was Corbin. I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. My mother was a seamstress. My father was a preacher. And the kind of love they showed me wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady. It was my father fixing my mother's reading glasses without her having to ask. It was my mother ironing his Sunday collar at 6 in the morning with the radio on low. I grew up thinking that's what love looks like. Quiet, consistent, safe. So when I finally gave my heart to someone, I gave it all the way. No holding back, no exit plan. That was just who I was. I was 26 when I met Corbin. I was working as a buyer for a mid-size fashion wholesale company, sourcing fabrics, managing vendor relationships, traveling to trade shows. I loved that job. I was good at it. I had built something real for myself, piece by piece, and I carried myself like I knew that. And I think that's what caught his attention first, honestly. Not the way I looked, the way I moved through a room like I had somewhere important to be. He came into one of our vendor meetings. His family owned a small chain of hotel properties, 3 of them inherited from his father, who passed when Corbin was in his late 20s. He was polished, he was easy to talk to, he made you feel like the most interesting person in whatever room you were standing in, and he pursued me for 8 full months before I said yes. 8 months of patience, of showing up, of doing the work. I thought that said something about his character. I thought a man who waits that long must really mean it. And for the first few years, he did. Or at least he played the part so well that the difference didn't matter. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life together that looked good from the outside and felt good from the inside, for a while. He called me my foundation. He said I was the reason he had the courage to keep running those properties when everything felt uncertain. I believed every word. But even in the good years, there were things, small things that I tucked away because I didn't want to be the woman who saw problems where there weren't any. A second phone I glimpsed once on the kitchen counter that disappeared before I could ask about it. A business trip that turned into 11 days when it was supposed to be 4. A woman's laugh on a call he took outside, the kind of laugh that isn't professional. I noted every single one of those things. And I said nothing, because I loved him, because I trusted him, because I was not yet ready to know the truth. It was the 6th year that everything started to tilt. I can't give you one specific moment because it wasn't one moment. It was 100 tiny ones. He stopped asking about my day. He started sleeping on his phone. He would be in the same room as me and somehow feel like he was miles away. I told myself it was stress. One of his hotel properties was bleeding money and he was under real financial pressure. So I did what I always did. I stepped up. I spent 3 months putting together a full rebrand strategy for the property, marketing direction, new vendor contacts, interior concept updates. I used everything I knew from my career and I poured it into his business. Because that's what you do when you love someone, right? You show up for them. He took that entire presentation to his board meeting, and not once, not in a single sentence did he mention my name. I found out from his operations manager, who called me by mistake, thinking I was Corbin's assistant. That one stung in a way I still feel when I think about it. And then came the name I would learn to hate, Nella. He mentioned it casually one evening, a consultant he'd brought in to help with the restructuring. I met her exactly once at a work dinner, and I remember the way Corbin's whole posture shifted when she walked in, like his spine straightened, like he was trying to look taller. I filed it away. I said nothing. When I finally brought up my concerns, calmly, carefully, choosing every word, Corbin looked at me like I had lost my mind. He said I was insecure. He said I had always struggled with trusting people because of my issues. He turned every single observation I had into a character flaw of mine. And the terrifying part? I started to believe him. I went to therapy, alone, to work on myself. He never went. Not once. But I sat in that office every week trying to figure out what was wrong with me. I think about that now, and I want to go back and hold that woman by the shoulders and tell her to look up. 8 months after the therapy started, Corbin sat me down on a Sunday afternoon. He said the marriage wasn't working, said we had grown apart. He used the kind of calm, hollow language that told me he had rehearsed this conversation. He asked for a separation. Not a divorce, a separation. I moved into a smaller apartment across the city. I cried every night for 3 weeks. And then one night, I just stopped. Not because the pain was gone, but because I was exhausted from watering something that was already dead. A mutual friend texted me one afternoon, maybe 6 weeks into the separation. She said, "Why is Corbin posting Nella on his private story?" I didn't even know I'd been blocked from seeing it. I made a second account, and there they were, laughing together on a rooftop, the same rooftop where Corbin had proposed to me 6 years earlier. Same string lights, same view of the city. He had taken her to the exact same spot. And somehow that detail, that specific, calculated detail, hurt more than anything else. 3 months into the separation, I received an envelope in the mail. Cream-colored, gold lettering, my full name written by hand on the front. I thought maybe it was a legal document. I opened it slowly. Inside was a printed card, an invitation, not to a wedding, to a proposal dinner. Corbin was planning a live public proposal to Nella at the grand ballroom of his flagship hotel property, the one I had rebranded, the one whose walls were painted the colors I had chosen. My name was on the guest list, written by his hand. I stood in my kitchen holding that card for a long time. I didn't move. I didn't breathe right. And then I called him. He answered on the second ring, calm as a still lake. I asked him what this was. He said he thought I should be there. He said I deserved to see him happy. He said it would give me closure. And then, and I need you to really hear this, he said, "You were always better at watching than doing anyway." Just like that, cool and clean, like he'd been saving that sentence for a long time. I hung up. I didn't cry. I went very, very quiet inside, and that quietness scared me more than the tears ever had. My mother told me not to go. She said it wasn't healthy, said it was designed to humiliate me, said no good would come from walking into a room where someone was using you as the audience for their happiness. My best friend said to burn the invitation, literally burn it. But my therapist, the one I had been sitting across from every week while I tried to fix a marriage I hadn't broken, said something different. She said maybe I had spent too many years running from the truth of that marriage. She said maybe it was time to walk straight into it. She wasn't telling me to go. She was telling me to stop being afraid of what I might see. I made my decision. I bought a dress, not to compete, not to prove anything. It was a deep burgundy, fitted at the waist, and when I stood in front of my mirror that evening, I looked at myself for a long time. For 2 years I had been shrinking, apologizing for things I didn't do, believing things about myself that weren't true. But the woman in that mirror looked like someone who had survived something, who had come out the other side of a beautiful lie and was still standing. I was going to that ballroom, not for him, for her, for me. I had no idea that what I was about to walk into would not go the way anyone in that room expected. I arrived at the hotel, and everything in that lobby belonged to me in ways no one there would ever know. The color of the walls, that warm, deep terracotta I had argued for in 3 separate meetings because Corbin kept saying it was too bold. The floral arrangements, white ranunculus and dried pampas, which I had suggested after visiting a vendor show in Atlanta. Every detail in that space existed because of choices I had made, and Corbin was using all of it to build a new beginning with someone else. I felt that in my chest, but I walked in anyway. I found my seat. People looked at me with that soft, pitying expression that people wear when they don't know what else to offer. I smiled back, not a sad smile, not a defensive one, just a steady, present smile that said I know exactly where I am and I chose to be here. And I waited. Corbin entered the ballroom with Nella on his arm, and the room responded to him the way it always did, warmly, easily, like he was exactly where he belonged. He caught my eye from across the room for just a moment, and I want you to understand what I saw in his face in that split second. It wasn't guilt. It was something older than guilt. It was fear, brief, unguarded, and real. And then it was gone, replaced by that smooth, easy smile, and he turned back to the room like nothing had happened. The speeches started. His best man talked about what a remarkable man Corbin was. His sister talked about love finding you when you least expect it. The room was warm and glowing, and everyone was leaning forward in their seats. I sat still. I drank my water. I kept my hands flat on the table so they wouldn't shake. And then Corbin dropped to one knee. Nella covered her mouth. The room held its breath. He began his speech, and it was smooth and practiced and beautiful in the way that something rehearsed can sometimes sound real if you don't listen too carefully. He talked about meeting his true match, about love being a choice you make every day. And I felt something cold move through me because those phrases, those exact phrases, he had said to me, standing in the rain outside a restaurant in Charleston on the night he proposed to me 7 years ago. He was using the same words for a different woman in a room I had designed. He slid the ring onto her finger. Nella said yes. The room erupted. They stood and they kissed, and for one breath I thought, okay, this is the ending. This is what you came to see. Now you can go. And then Nella pulled back. She stepped back from that kiss with a look on her face that I cannot fully describe to you. It wasn't joy anymore. It was something shifting, like a memory surfacing, like a name she had been trying to place finally clicking into position. She turned not to Corbin, not to the crowd. She turned directly to me. Across that entire ballroom, through all those people, her eyes found mine, and she said out loud, in a room that was quickly going quiet around her, "You're his wife." Not a question, not a guess, a recognition. The room fractured, murmuring moved through it like a current. Corbin laughed that short, nervous laugh of a man trying to regain control of a room and said we were separated, that it was complicated, that this wasn't the time. But Nella wasn't looking at him anymore. She had taken one step back, and she was standing very still, and her expression had moved past surprise into something that looked like a decision being made in real time. She said, "Corbin, I need to tell you something in front of everyone right now." And what came out of her mouth next turned the entire room to stone. Nella had not come into Corbin's life as a consultant hired by him. She had originally been brought in by the lawyers managing his late father's estate, specifically to audit the hotel property books after one of Corbin's younger siblings raised concerns about inconsistencies. What she found during that audit was a deliberate, careful pattern. Corbin had been siphoning money from the hotel properties for years, money that legally still belonged to his two younger siblings, both of whom had been minors when their father passed, and whose shares of the inheritance Corbin had been quietly absorbing. She had been building a case, getting closer to him to get closer to the evidence. And then somewhere in the middle of all of it, she had made the mistake that investigators sometimes make. She developed real feelings. She convinced herself that the man she had come to know was different from the paper trail she was following. She had said yes to a proposal from a man she was already preparing to expose. And then there was me, the part of the story I hadn't known I was in. The rebrand documents I had created for the hotel, the ones Corbin took into that board meeting without mentioning my name, contained internal financial data I had compiled myself. Revenue comparisons, vendor cost restructuring, operational budget reallocation. Months before I ever received that envelope in the mail, Nella had requested copies of those documents through a third party, someone inside the company I used to work with. She had known they came from me. I had been an unwitting witness in a financial investigation against my own husband, holding the very documents that helped complete the picture. I want you to sit with that for a moment. While I was in therapy trying to figure out what was wrong with me, I had already, unknowingly, helped build the case that would undo him. Corbin tried to move toward the exit, and that's when a man stood up from a table near the back of the room. Quietly, no drama, just rose to his feet. It was Corbin's younger brother, one of the siblings who had been in contact with Nella for months. Corbin had invited him to the dinner, not knowing any of this. He thought his brother had come to celebrate him. His brother looked at him across that ballroom and said, simply and without raising his voice, "Don't go anywhere, Corbin." Two estate lawyers were already waiting in the corridor outside. I didn't stay to watch the rest of it. I picked up my bag, I stood up from that table, and I walked out of that ballroom the same way I walked in, steady, present, and clear, down the corridor, past the walls I had chosen the colors for, past the floral arrangements I had suggested, through the front doors and out into the night air. And I stood on that sidewalk and I breathed, just breathed, in and out, like I hadn't really done it properly in years. The legal process unfolded over the following months the way those things do, slowly and then all at once. Corbin's financial misconduct against his siblings became the central matter. The separation became a divorce. In the settlement, my documented contributions to the hotel rebrand were formally recognized. The paper trail I had unknowingly created protected me in ways I could never have planned for. I didn't have to fight loudly. I just had to let the record speak. Nella and I never became friends. I want to be honest about that because I think sometimes people expect a tidy sisterhood at the end of a story like this, and that's not real life. But we did have one phone call about 3 months after that night. It was short. She apologized, not for falling for him, but for being inside my life in ways I hadn't consented to, even if she hadn't known who I was at first. I accepted the apology. Not for her, for me, because I had learned, slowly and painfully, that carrying other people's guilt only ever weighs down the person holding it. I went back to what I knew: fashion wholesale, sourcing, the work I had always been good at before I started pouring myself into someone else's vision. I started my own small consultancy, just me and 2 people I trust completely. It's not enormous, but it's mine in a way that nothing I built inside that marriage ever fully was. And mornings are different now. I wake up and there is no weight sitting on my chest. There is no dread, no bracing for a version of myself that someone else decided I should be. I make my coffee, I sit by my window, and I recognize the woman I am again. He brought me to that room to humiliate me, to position me as the past while he stepped into the future. He wanted me to sit in that ballroom and feel small and forgotten and replaceable. What he didn't know, what none of us knew walking into that room that night, was that the truth had already been in motion long before any of us arrived. He'd spent years building a careful, constructed world on top of lies, and it only took one woman pulling back from a kiss to bring all of it down. I didn't plan any of it. I didn't orchestrate anything. I just showed up. And sometimes when you've been honest and you've done the work and you've loved people the right way even when they didn't deserve it, sometimes showing up is genuinely all you have to do. The truth doesn't need your help. It just needs enough time. If this story hit you somewhere deep, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. I want to know, did he deserve everything that came for him? Because I read every single comment, every one. And if you are going through something that feels like this right now, something that has you questioning yourself, shrinking yourself, fixing yourself for someone who was never going to meet you halfway, just know that the truth always finds its way out. It always does. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.